Thanks all for joining. There's nothing wrong with your computer. That was what actual practicing looks like. Welcome to our latest live stream. My name's Jonathan Roberts. For those of you who we may have not met before, or maybe you haven't seen any of our other content here on YouTube, I am the director of the South Shore Piano School, just south of Boston, Massachusetts, in the lovely town of Quincy, Massachusetts, where my 9 incredible colleagues and I work with over 300 students every week, changing lives, trying to make more music in the world. And through our YouTube channel, we're all about trying to provide practical, usable content that you can apply to your own practicing to make the otherwise very complicated, overwhelming process of learning the piano accessible, manageable, easy to understand, and most importantly, fun. So in this live stream, we're going to talk about how to learn a new piece of music as quickly as possible. We're going to talk about misconceptions about what it means to practice, what the proper steps are to learn something faster, the science of what actually happens in your body, how to put together a game plan to learn pieces faster. And I promise, based on my experience with students who have followed through with this, if you apply this to your own practice for, say, 7 days in a row, you'll be absolutely astounded at how much faster you learn new pieces of music. So I'm really excited to have you here with me. Go ahead and drop in the chat what you're struggling with right now as a piano student, or maybe you're a parent watching this. Maybe you have specific musical problems or specific pieces that you're working on that you're running into challenges. With all of these live streams, we'd like to keep it as interactive as we can. So please, any questions that you have, please drop them in the chat and I will get to every single one because I want to make sure that we deliver as much value for you as we possibly can. I see the Amancio family is with us. Thank you again for joining us. And Hang with the Bro, a regular here on our YouTube live streams. Thank you so much for joining. If you caught me right at the beginning, you just saw the middle of a practice session that I'm having on the Rachmaninoff Prelude in C minor. That was the piece that I was playing. And you might have noticed that I wasn't playing it fast. I was just playing a small chunk again and again and again and again. So we're going to talk about why, as sort of paradoxical as it is, while in the moment it might seem like we're not getting anywhere with our practicing, this is actually the fastest route to awesome. And if you can master this process, you'll be absolutely amazed at how fast you can learn new pieces of the piano. So this is just our 4th live stream ever. So I will be playing with a few new features here today. Hopefully everything runs properly. Don't go anywhere if anything weird happens. In the chat, Emily, probably playing fast. I try to play fast, but always slip up. I'm so glad you mentioned that right off the bat because we're going to talk a lot about that in this session. So first, I'm going to try to share my little slideshow. And I figured just a straightforward practical title, how to learn new piano music as quickly as possible, would be applicable. Even if you're here not as a piano student, maybe you play violin. I see Hanging with the Bro is also learning violin. And Marie, practice. Yes, of course, but it's not just practice, but how you practice, which I'm excited to share with you today. So let's dive straight in. I've got my little slideshow to make this just slightly more engaging. I'll do some playing for you to sort of illustrate how this works with a brand new piece of music. We'll start with sort of a simple piece, and then later, if you want to stick around, I have a brand new piece loaded into my iPad that I've never touched before if you want to see this process in action. And then we're also going to play a Kahoot game. So a Kahoot, if you've never heard of it before, it's basically a fun little game show that you can play from home. All you need is a second device to tune in, or if you're watching this on the computer, you can just open up another screen on your computer and play from there. Hello, Margaret and Louie. Thank you for tuning in and saying hello. And let's go ahead and just dive in. Let's dive straight into the contents. And again, as much as you can, ask questions in the chat, share your problems. If you have a specific piece of music you're working on and you're running into hurdles, put it in the comments. I might actually have it here in my iPad. We can look at it together. And let's just get straight to it. So at the foundation of this is that most people don't understand how practicing works. It's just, let's just be real with that up front. Hollywood did this to us. Pretty much if you watch any Hollywood movie based on a musician, Hollywood does not depict how actual practicing of music works. Filming takes advantage of the montage to show people's progress. Why? Because in film, if people saw how people actually practiced music, in order to become awesome, it really wouldn't be that interesting to watch. And you will see why in just a moment. I see Ming is joining us. Thank you. Hello to you. And Hang with the Bro asks, have you ever played another instrument before? Yes, I played the saxophone for a long time, but I had to put it to the side because there just wasn't enough time to be awesome at the saxophone and the piano. Okay, so most people don't understand how practicing works. Let's talk about the common pitfalls of this. The number one pitfall is sayings like practice makes perfect. Practice is part of the equation, but practice does not automatically make perfect. I only had one student that took it to this extreme, but extreme examples are always helpful to make a point. Several years ago, I had a student, believe it or not, who practiced 4 hours a night. 4 hours a night. And she didn't improve. She would come back in the following week, exhausted, and she had all the same problems. And we would talk about many of the things we're going to talk about in this live stream. Slowing down, being more mindful, being more methodical, having a longer term plan, understanding how myelination works. You're going to learn that term shortly. And after just so many lessons, so many months, she ended up burning out, leaving my studio. And what was funny was years and years later, I would say over like 10 years later, she became a music major. And I saw this article where she had this breakthrough suddenly. And the teacher where she was getting her master's said, oh, well, we had a breakthrough when we, broke everything down into smaller goals and more manageable pieces. And I was like, that's what I was saying. So many examples that I can think of where practice doesn't automatically make perfect or even make better. It's a nice saying that rolls off the tongue. I think, as you'll see as we go on, the better phrase would probably be like, mindful practice makes improvement or progress. I know it doesn't roll off the tongue quite as easily as this one, but just something to keep in mind. So anytime you hear that phrase, practice makes perfect, there should be a little asterisk there with a little deeper explanation of that. The next common pitfall is this perception of just keep practicing it until you get it right. It took me so long before I realized that this just didn't work. There's this perception, I think, among musicians that you have to endure all this frustration and you keep at it and you make mistakes and mistakes and mistakes and mistakes and mistakes until miraculously one day you get it right. You get it right once and then you're done. And then you can stop practicing. So with this philosophy, basically practicing is this miserable experience that you have to suffer through every time until you get it right like once or twice. The way I'm going to show you actually flips that. And rather than making all these errors and having to endure all this frustration, we're going to break it down so that you can play things correctly the first time and then build off of that. So we'll go into that in just a little bit. But keeping on with our pitfalls here. And we'll stop periodically for some Q&A. So I see some questions coming in the chat. As I continue talking, promise I'm not ignoring you. I will answer the questions as they come in. This is one of the biggest myths of all, that you have to love every moment. You have to love every moment of practicing. And if you don't enjoy practicing, if you don't enjoy learning new music, then you must not like piano, and we should stop. I think this is one of the biggest dream-killing myths out there. There's a really amazing book. I meant to have a copy here to hold up for you, but I think it's in another room. It's called Relentless by Tim Grover. If you've followed my content in other places, you see I bring this book up quite a bit. I am not a sports person at all, like at all. If there were a possibility to be like negative, enjoying sports, watching sports, playing sports, I'm not a sports person at all. This is a sports book, but it totally changed my outlook on this whole idea of loving every moment. The book is by Tim Grover, who was Michael Jordan's trainer, and he trained a ton of the NBA's most legendary athletes. Charles Barkley, Kobe Bryant, people whose basketball games I've never watched, but even I, the piano player, have heard their name because their careers are so legendary. And in this book, he outlines these 13 principles of what he believes it means to be a relentless individual, or a cleaner, as he calls it. And one of the most profound insights that he wrote was that you don't have to love the work. You just have to crave the results. And that really resonated to me, because if I could skip all the practicing, go straight to having my polished piece or straight to sounding awesome, I would. And I think most of us probably would. But if it were that easy, then everybody would be playing piano or violin or whatever. It wouldn't be as a notable achievement. And it's just how it works with building skill. So when it came to Michael Jordan specifically, and I just totally underestimated this is how sports work. He basically wrote that, say Michael Jordan took a shot and missed, it wasn't just, oh, it didn't work out that day. They would go back, they'd watch the footage many, many, many times. They'd recreate the conditions of the shot. And then he would take that shot again and again and again, like literally thousands and thousands of times, taking the same exact shot. So when he would score the winning basket in the big game, it wasn't just this luck thing. The dude knew the ball was going to go in the basket because he had practiced it thousands of times. And when you think about it, I don't think anybody can practice anything thousands of times and love every moment of it. So I know I kind of went off on a little tangent there, but this is one reason we've lost a number of students over the years, because a student had a bad week where they weren't enjoying their practice. Their parents thought, well, this isn't for him. And then that's the end of their piano journey. So this is one that I would love for you to just kind of throw out along with the other common pitfall sayings that we have here in piano perceptions, piano practice perceptions, we'll call that. And then the other one, this is another big myth, that you need to be talented in order for this practicing thing to work. Talent, I think, is probably one of the biggest myths in all of learning how to play a musical instrument, learning to do anything. There's a great book, magnificent book. It's called The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle, where he basically did a study of, not just in music, but in many fields, just studying the best of the best of the best to see what they had in common. Was there some miraculous gene in there that made them become incredible at what they did? And what he found was that it wasn't an inborn thing. It was created. Actually, I think that's the tagline of the book. It's the talent code. Talent isn't born, it's created. Here's how. And Daniel Coyle goes into a lot of this stuff when it comes to mindful practice, methodical practice, having amazing teachers, all of this business. But it all comes down to just tweaking the process, being obsessed with the process. So as we go on, we're going to talk about this process of what it means to practice and learn a new piece, specifically in the context of learning a new piece, as quickly as we can. All right, I'm going to pause here for just a moment to take a peek at what comments we have here. Genshin's Bizarre Adventures, awesome YouTube name. I am playing as we speak. Okay, that's cool. I always love being a backdrop for anybody's journey in music. And actually, let me put this back here. Here we go. Hanging with the bro. Hanging with the bro, mindful practice is the best practice. Absolutely. We're going to talk more and more about that. Ming says, hey, Mr. Jonathan, how long have you been teaching? So I basically started teaching as early as it was legal for me to teach. So, I suppose technically that would go back to a little bit of high school, but I really started seriously teaching as a freshman in my undergrad. So I guess at that point I would have been 18, legal adult, freshman year, University of New Hampshire. I was fortunate to have an awesome teacher who also sort of impressed this importance of us not only being able to play, but also being able to teach, not as just this side thing to make money, but also as this nice synergy. And over the years, I found that as I teach students, I learn more about myself. And as I learn more about myself, I can impart that on my students. So it's been a wonderful ride. Thank you so much for that question. And then Hanging with the Bro says, my parents when I don't want it. I have a feeling that was probably an incomplete thought. So if you want to come back to that, feel free. But let's go on now to the more exciting stuff. And now let's talk about how practicing really works. One of my favorite analogies for this is Legos. I think most of us have built Legos over the years. So we've got a new piece of music, fresh canvas, ready to roll. What happens? Well, think about a Lego set. So this is a Lego castle. So when you get your Lego set, you're probably not going to sort of guess how this Lego set is put together. By the way, just a side note, I think nobody's notified me that they can't hear me, but if somebody could just drop in the chat that you can hear me properly, I'm always a little paranoid about the sound. Much appreciated. So getting back to our Lego castle, you're probably not going to take a wild guess at how this castle is put together. And even if you just tried to take the pieces and go by the picture on the box, it's probably still going to be a little bit of a struggle. Oh, thank you, Megan. Much appreciated. And everybody else who said they can hear me. Anyway, so we have our Lego castle. We're not going to, I mean, assuming that we want to have a castle, like what we see on the box, we're not going to guess how it's put together. We're not going to look at the box and figure out how it's put together. Every Lego set has this lovely set of instructions that tells you exactly what to do, step by step. The problem is when it comes to piano in this analogy, I think most of us kind of approach our practice sort of like this, where we have our sort of big mass of blocks and it's like, all right, well, I think this goes here and maybe this will look nice, or you know what, this is such a big mess, I'm just going to walk away and play Minecraft or something. So one of our first takeaways here when it comes to learning a new piece as possible is we need a step-by-step plan for learning a new piece of music. The challenge with music, of course, is our music doesn't come with a set of instructions telling us exactly what to do. We sort of have to be our own instruction maker. And if you've ever tried to put together anything you got from a Walmart, you know there's a huge need for writers of instruction manuals. So this could also give you some skill sets that you could use in other areas. Ha ha ha. Hopefully one person found that funny. And we need to embrace myelination. So myelination is a big topic we're going to talk about today. I'm curious if anybody wants to drop in the chat if they've ever actually heard of myelination before. I'd be very curious. But it's really the foundation of what helps anybody learn any skill. For those of you who have maybe played piano for a while, or maybe you do ballet, maybe you do dance, you know how when you practice something again and again and again and again, and you reach a point where that sticks. So there is an actual biological process that happens in your body. It's called myelination. I'm sure I'm going to get some of this wrong. I figured I'd just pull up the official definition in case there's anybody in the medical field actually watching this. I'll read this and then I'll explain a normal people version of it. But myelination is a process by which a fatty substance called myelin accumulates around the axon of nerve cells, neurons. This myelin sheath serves to insulate the nerve fibers, significantly increasing the speed and efficiency of electrical signal transmission along the neuron. Myelination is crucial for the proper functioning of the nervous system, aiding in the rapid and coordinated communication required for sensory perception, motor skills, and complex cognitive processes. This process begins during fetal development and continues through early adulthood, playing a key role in brain development and learning. So let me translate that into a more usable version. It's that myelin is that beautiful process where you don't have to think about your actions anymore, where you can play with freedom. If you play violin, you know you're going to get that high, whatever in tune. If you're playing the piano, your fingers just kind of know where to go. It's that point where we can go from working at music to really settling and enjoying music. And what I'm going to show you is basically a process you can follow to kickstart this myelination process. And rather than showing more slides, I figured I would show it through some practical examples here. We'll even detour into the world of video games slightly in order to make this even more interesting. So I'm going to close this up. I'm going to come back here, see if this works properly. Great. See if my Apple Pencil has charge. Beautiful. Okay, so this is a common student piece. And the main problem with learning a new piece of music that most piano teachers, music teachers can relate to is that students have the habit of just playing from beginning to the end. And from beginning to end, wherever happens, happens. See you at the lesson next week. So something like that may look like So you can probably imagine practicing like that, this piece would take a very, very, very long time to learn. So we're going to talk about the 2 steps. First, planning, long-term plan, and then second, kickstarting the myelination process, which to myelinate, I don't know if that's an actual word, but the most efficient way to kickstart that is through mindful practice in small sections. Now, obviously, I've been playing for a long time. I could probably sight read this with 99% accuracy if I wanted to, but I'm just gonna pretend I'm a student learning this. So when we practice, rather than playing through the whole thing, I mean, maybe we'll sight read through it once just to get a lay of the land and figure out where the hard parts are going to be. Mark those places in the music. But whatever level you're at, and that's what I love about this process. It works whether you're a beginner, it works if you're intermediate, advanced, professional, whatever. So rather than saying, all right, I'm going to play through this whole thing and hope that one day I learn it, what I like to do is get a pencil. And this is one reason I like to use the iPad, because I can scribble like this and then erase it later rather than sort of destroying my actual music. But I like to use these brackets to separate the music into sections. And I'll go through some of the common pitfalls. I invite you to keep a notebook and notes handy if anything particularly resonates with you, because a lot of this is going to be sort of a brain dump of everything I've learned from myself and from my students over the years when it comes to this. But rather than playing through the whole thing, again, we're going to try to trigger that myelination process. So with a younger student, I might just say, all right, let's just start with the first 2 measures. And again. And again. And then usually I would say once you get like 3 good ones in a row, it's probably okay to move on. Everybody's a little different. For some people, it might be 5, it might be 10. For a while, I experimented with like 25 times in a row. It actually doesn't take as long as you'd think it would, and it actually yields some surprisingly effective results. But this is what kickstarts that process. Now, when it comes to practicing in chunks like this, a lot is also going to hinge on, as I'm seeing Chris mention, sight reading. So your sight reading level, how well you can read brand new pieces of music. And it's also going to depend on the specific musical challenges. It's not always going to be exactly the same. That's just how music works. So what I'll usually tell students, and this is where that sort of myth comes in about you have to like mess up, and then one day it's miraculously amazing. You start with what you can do correctly and then build from there. I'll show you an example. Like, let's say if I'm working with a student and it's like, clearly it's not going to happen. Hands together, even those 2 measures. What we can do is change the parameters to make it doable. So I can change these brackets. So let's say one thing we could do is do less music. So instead of doing 2 measures, we can do 1 measure. And then do that a bunch of times. And again. Now, let's say that's too hard. Let's say just that 1 measure is hard. We could go down to 2 beats. If that's too hard, we can go down to 1 beat. That's one option. Another thing you could do is bring the speed down. Very, very, very slow. Slow enough that you can look ahead and process the intervals. And slow isn't bad. A lot of people think I'm practicing slow. I must not be progressing very well. But it's actually doing a lot. Because up here, it's starting that myelination process, especially if you can do it slowly many, many times in a row. There are other ways you could break it down too. You could break it down by just doing the right hand by itself. Do the left hand by itself. But the point is, you want to start with each of these chunks with what you're able to do correctly. If you take one thing away from this live stream, it's that you want to start with what you can do and then build it from there. Now, like I said, sight reading plays a factor, because this is one of those reasons why we want to work our music theory skills and our sight reading, because if reading the correct notes is a challenge, if rhythms are a challenge, this will all take a little bit longer. Same process, but the more you develop those underlying skills, the faster you're going to be able to do this. But I've known terrific sight readers, and because they again, because they couldn't nail down this process, it would still take us like 4 or 5 months to learn just one piece of music. So for you, we want to try to get that down to like a couple weeks tops. So that's one example. I'll show you a couple other little tools that you can use here. There are also these places, I call them hinge points. Basically, like let's say we've practiced this chunk, and then we've practiced this chunk, but we have a problem just getting there for some reason, where I drew that arrow. Like let's say a student's playing. But once they get there, then they're fine. So it's literally just that one beat. Another tool you can use here is going up to that hinge point. So drawing all focus to that and just practicing going. Or, again, efficiency is very important when you're practicing. If all this is already good, you can just practice that part. Just that. And again, anything you do should be repeated many, many times in a row. This is one of the funniest misconceptions, because when people hear we're musicians, they say, oh, it must be so wonderful living in your house, all the wonderful music. No, not really, because when we're learning a new piece of music, they hear. I call it the broken record style of practicing, which is the most effective style of practicing that you can do. And then finally, this is where, and I'm sure I'll think of some other things as we go, but also very important is mindfulness when it comes to practicing. Because remember how I said a lot of students will kind of trash from the beginning to the end, beginning to the end, beginning to the end. Whatever happens, happens. Another thing that happens is, let's say, again, in this hypothetical example, because as an advanced pianist, I'm just trying to I'm trying to imitate what we often see. Like, let's say a student has trouble with this note, the F. And let's say they're doing, I'll zoom in a little bit there. Let's say a student's going, when they play the wrong note and then play the correct note on the spot, like, whoops, whoops. I'm sure at least a few of you watching have been there, where you make the same mistake every time and you correct it on the spot. What's interesting here is we unknowingly practice the mistake. We've actually gotten really good at going, oh, whoops. Again, it's sort of myelination working against us, which is why we want to work our mindfulness. If you don't know what mindfulness is, it's basically where you're staying present in the moment and constantly thinking about how you can make little adjustments in your practicing, rather than just trying to do it again and hope that it's correct on the next one. Amanda Roberts Violin Studio says, a rule I like is to drill it at least twice as many times correctly than incorrectly. Yes, I love that. So if you fumble, do it 2 more times without a fumble. Yes, absolutely. So yes, however many times you've done something incorrectly, you have to do it many, many more times in order to make the correct way the new way. So it's another thing to keep in mind. And it's all the more reason why we want to try to learn things correctly to begin with. So let's say we have a note like this. It's being like very, very pesky. And how we can use mindfulness to fix that. Well, the first part of that is identifying the problem. So we know that problem is our F. Okay, so identifying the problem. Second is identifying how to fix it. So in this case, we're going up by a step rather than going up by a skip. And then, probably most importantly, we want to go into the problem spot thinking about what we're going to fix. Because what happens a lot of times, at least with my students, is we'll talk about all this, and then they'll still manage to zone out somewhere in here and then go, oh, whoops. So what we want to do is think about the thing we're trying to fix as we go into it in our quests for myelination and building our step-by-step plan for learning a new piece. So I'm just going to sort of speak what I'm thinking in my head. If I were in that situation, I'd be thinking, all right, I have an F coming up. Whoops. I have an F coming up. F coming up. Here it is. Step up. Oh, there we go. Got it first time. And then do that many, many, many times. let's pause there just for a moment so I can answer a few questions that have come in on the live chat. Thank you, everybody, for being very participatory in today's live stream. Chris said, dang, why are you calling me out? Well, to be fair, I think everybody can relate to this. It's really hard, and we're gonna talk about this in just a moment. The challenges of this practice process that really keeps a lot of people from doing it all the time, because there are challenges. I'm going to discuss how you can tackle those challenges. And, even if you have some questions that are sort of peripheral, not necessarily directly related to this, feel free to put them in the chat, because I always like to make sure I can answer any questions from people that are here, even if it's not to do with exactly what we're talking about in this moment. Marie asked, how can you encourage a child to practice? That is such a important question, and a big one, and a really hard one to answer, just because every family dynamic is a little bit different. So I'll just sort of give a brain dump here and encouraging a child to practice. I'll share a story about myself. Fun fact, I hated practicing. Did not like practicing. If I had grown up today with, I hesitate to say, the average family household, but in today's world, I probably would not have ended up continuing with piano. So I grew up in the early 90s, single parent household, low income, the whole thing, but piano was one of my activities. But it was a rule of the household, without question. When you get home from school, it's straight to the piano, half an hour. Didn't matter if I had a lot of homework, didn't matter if I was busy, didn't matter if I had other extracurriculars I was doing. It was when I get home, it's straight to the piano, practice for 30 minutes. And there were a lot of periods where I absolutely hated it. I hated piano. I probably said, my mother and I exchanged some harsh words from time to time. But the reality is I got better at it really quick, because I was playing the piano every day. And as I got better at piano, I became more excited about playing the piano, and then it wasn't such a hassle. But I think, despite some of, I think today that would probably be considered kind of harsh parenting. But I think one of the biggest things I got out of that was just the power of habit, where when I got home, I just knew that was the routine. It was just when I get home, it's straight to the piano, I do my 30 minutes, and then on to the next thing. In terms of other ways you could encourage a child to practice, one is just making music a regular part of family life. One thing I'm noticing more and more these days is that, here, I'll switch it to this screen for a little so we can talk more, bigger face. One thing I'm noticing more and more these days is that kids don't listen to music as much as they used to. And I think as adults who grew up before the internet, before we could press a button and get access to anything we ever wanted without having to really pay for it, I think it's easier for us to take that for granted. So I think talking about music, it doesn't have to be piano music. It could be talking about the Beatles, Coldplay, Imagine Dragons, whatever kids are listening to these days, just to make music part of the fabric of everyday life. I'm finding that a lot of families where kids struggle to practice, they kind of live in a musical desert where their kids, they don't have a favorite band. They can't even name like any band. My theory around this, like I was sort of alluding to, is I think because music is so omnipresent now, like you can just press a button, you can go on YouTube, listen to anything you want, whenever you want. I think to a degree, it's been taken for granted a little bit. I think it was very different when, if there was one Elton John song that you liked and you wanted to listen to at home, you had to go to the store, you had to buy the entire album, $20 at the record store, and you really treasured that. And you put it in your CD player. If you're a little bit older, put it in your cassette player, things like that. So I would say, and if anybody else has some suggestions around encouraging kids to practice, feel free to throw it in the chat. This is always something I'm happy to go on a side quest on to talk about. And then we're going to talk about how to make this process of practicing a little more fun, which I think will also be helpful in encouraging children to practice. Let's see. Yeah, so some other recommendations really quick is, again, the more you can make it part of the habit, just say like, this is what we do. So you get home, you do your homework, you practice piano, and then it's on to the next thing. It might be struggle for a little while, but if you can just do that for several days, in a weird way, it's almost like this myelination thing we've been talking about, but it's just developing a habit so that at a certain point in the day, that's what we do. Some other ideas could be preparing for a recital, because if we're just kind of learning piano and whether we do well, we don't do so well, and whatever happens is fine. I think that's very different than, all right, we've got a recital we're doing on February, it's December, we have to prepare. So that's where like accountability and community can be really helpful. Another helpful thing could be finding other kids who also play piano and getting them together. I think that's one of the challenges with piano, because it's sort of by nature a solo instrument. It's sort of naturally the loneliest instrument, it's the most solitary instrument. String players have orchestra, wind players have band, singers have choir. Piano, not so much. So finding some other friends, maybe just noodling around on the piano, making things up, doing duets, things like that. And then the best thing you could do actually is also to practice yourself. So as a parent, if you can, this YouTube channel is one of them. There's all kinds of places where even if you don't necessarily want to take lessons, you can learn some piano and actually establish that practice habit yourself. One of the sort of ironies I found over the years is a lot of parents expect their kids to do things that they wouldn't do themselves, for lack of a better term. So I think one of the best ways that I think when we have kids, we can lead by example and establish some sort of practice routine for ourselves, even if we're just playing at the piano for 5 minutes a day. So that's sort of my quick, slightly rambling answer to that question. That's a big one. That's given me a good idea for another live stream. And we're actually thinking to interview a specialist in this department who's really dedicated a ton of research into this whole topic of making music more exciting for kids to practice. So stay tuned on that. Chris asked if I have recommended books or resources for sight reading. Since that does relate to this topic, sure, let's talk about sight reading for a bit. I think this is a very misunderstood topic, but when it comes to sight reading books, there aren't a lot of things out there. What I'm going to suggest is probably not exactly what you're expecting, but it's always fun to talk about. One thing that you can do that will actually, let me step back. There are a couple strategies you can use to get better at sight reading with piano. One is reading music by interval. If you caught our live stream a couple days ago, you can find the replay if you missed that. It's all about note reading at the piano. But when we read notes, we're not sort of like pointillistically looking at every letter, but we're looking at the distance between the notes. We're reading the music in shapes and contours. If that's something that you're not used to, that's definitely a helpful skill to develop. So reading music by interval. Another very important thing is practicing the skill of looking ahead as you play. So for example, here, let's see if I can illustrate this with my iPad. So let's say this circle represents where you're looking. Oops. All right, I'm going to move around like this. All right, this might be a little bit of a challenge, but let's see if I can do it. So a lot of people who are struggling with sight reading will look at music kind of like this. So they look at the note when they have to play it. They keep looking at the note as they're playing it. And then they're basically looking at the next note right when they need to play it. And that just doesn't give the brain enough time to react. So the more you can practice looking ahead at the music you play. So in this example, I'll say, look at least one note ahead. That might look something more like. So it's almost like a little time paradox where wherever we are, we're looking a little bit ahead so that we can prepare. So those are a couple little tactical things that you can do. But I think something that's often underestimated is just the power of learning lots of music. When you think about how we've gotten good at reading books, I'm assuming everybody watching this live stream is good at reading. We didn't have to read like nobody handed us a children's book and said, here, sight read this book. We started, we did go level by level, of course, when we go from kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. But most of us have gotten really good at reading books because we just read lots of books. We read easy books. We read more challenging books. Basically, if you read lots of books as a kid, you're probably really good at reading books now. It's not really all that different than music. So one thing you can try, if this is something that you want to seriously delve into for improving your sight reading, is something that Alyssa Milne, a fantastic teacher in Australia, invented. She calls it the 40-piece challenge. It's basically to take a span of time, maybe about a month, and the challenge is to learn 40 pieces in 1 month. or 2 months or 3 months, whatever time span you want to set. And sometimes when people hear this, they seize up and they 40 pieces. How am I going to do that? But the catch is that those 40 pieces can be of any level. So you can learn 15 really, really easy pieces and maybe 10 or 15 intermediate ones and only a handful of more difficult ones. And from having done this with a bunch of my students, it was really interesting. I found that just as they learned more pieces of music, they got better at learning new pieces of music. And then that sight reading process can speed up all of this other stuff we're talking about with practicing in sections, doing many repetitions, and so on and so forth. So let me know if that's helpful, guys, in the chat, because as I always say in these things, I want to make sure that we're delivering the value and giving you some interesting ideas to talk about. So let's talk about the elephant in the room when it comes to this process, because we know that practicing in sections and doing lots of repetitions and all that stuff, that sounds wonderful. And if we're that easy, why don't we do it, right? And it's because it gets boring. It's just, I don't think anybody can do anything that many times in a row and love every second of it. It can get tedious. So that's why we want to develop that self-awareness. Again, keeping in mind that many legendary people just like yourself have come before, going through this process of, going through these many, many, many reps, whether it's music, whether it's sports, whether it's basketball, whether it's soccer, whether it's dance. Great documentary, This Is It, the Michael Jackson documentary. I always used to think that Michael Jackson just kind of like whipped all this amazing stuff, with the snap of the fingers. That documentary actually, I think, does a really good job of showing the behind the scenes and really all the kind of work that went into that. So first, just remember that. But I'm going to show you something a little bit more practical that you might be able to use. And I actually want to use a video game analogy here. And this is my first time trying to load a video like this. So students who have been in SSPS for a while, who've known me for a while, you might know that I tried a Minecraft experiment some years ago because I was noticing that students were playing Minecraft a lot. I think maybe it's not quite as crazy popular as it was, 5 or 6 years ago, but I'd have students who really struggled to play piano for even, 5 or 10 minutes a day. But they play Minecraft for 2 hours, 3 hours. So I was thinking to myself, what is it about playing Minecraft that's so intriguing? And what is it? How does this work? And then so I set a challenge for myself because I just want to be like the cool teacher who does the things that the kids do, and instead of just being like, oh, Minecraft, whatever the heck that is, I thought, all right, I'm going to try to learn Minecraft. I'm going to make a YouTube series on this, 7-8 parts. I'm going to learn how this works. I gave up after the second video. I may pick it up again, maybe even before this Christmas. I'll let you know. But this clip, I think, this sort of montage clip, I think accurately represents my struggles with trying to learn to play Minecraft. So this is a clip, I think, from either the very first or very second time that I played this game.
Here we go. Oh, that scares the out of me every time. Ooh. Oh, shoot. Man. Oh, there's another sheep. Man, everything tries to kill you at night. I'm not sure what I got. Oh, blown up by a creeper. Maybe I can... Oh man, really? Alright, I'm gonna attack this one. I'm gonna take the aggressive stance. Oh, Enderman. Oh, jump, 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 jump! Run! Alright, so during the day, it's manual labor, and at night, you just try to survive. And that's Minecraft. No way, it rains too? Whoa. I'm sorry. I feel so guilty about this. Oh shoot, monsters come out when it rains. Die. It takes so long to kill. Ah! Ha ha ha, you can't get me now. Oh shoot. Who just fired that? Oh no, it's one of those things! Ah! Run, run, run! Go, go, go. Ah. Which way's forward? Ah. Run, 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 run. Come on, sheep. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Oh, little zombie. No, don't. Ah! What's this? Oh, maybe that's a sheep. Oh, no. Oh, that's so horrible.
Okay, so once you're finished laughing at that, so this was kind of a mind-blowing thing for me because Minecraft to me isn't really that fun of a game. So this is I think that montage you watched, that was my second attempt at trying to play this game, and it was like a massive fail. But I had all these students that were like 6, 7, 8, 9 years old who were like beating the whole thing. Like kids who had ADHD, dyslexia, borderline special needs would beat the entire thing. And I couldn't even get through like just figuring out what the heck you're supposed to do. So I was thinking about this and, you know, what is it that's the difference? Because when you think about it, this group of kids, and it's nothing against Minecraft. I actually think it's kind of for me, I think it's kind of a boring game. I'll probably try to finish it just to say that I finished the experiment that I started 3 years ago. But it's an interesting game. I don't find it especially interesting as one who grew up with like 2D side scroller games in the 90s. But it occurred to me that students were getting really good at Minecraft because they were practicing lots of Minecraft. Crazy, right? We don't really think about video games as being like a form of practicing, but it kind of is, because as we die and as we do it again, we're changing our strategies. We're being mindful about the game that we're playing, how we're going to do it a little bit differently to get to the next goal. But even things like, you know, if you're familiar with Minecraft, in order to really progress in the game, you have to find diamonds, which is one of the hardest things to find in the game. And so as I found myself sitting in my basement spending an hour and a half digging through digital dirt to find diamonds, questioning a number of life decisions, I was thinking to myself, like, this really isn't that fun. Like, what's the allure here? And it just occurred to me some of the key differences between video games and practicing the piano. One is just having that visual feedback. You always, when you play a video game, there's never a question of like where you stand, whether you're winning the game, whether you're losing the game, how much health you have, how to get to the next level, things like that. That's something that we don't quite have in piano, but you can sort of recreate. I'm going to show you a couple strategies that you can use here. But even if you look at video games now versus video games from 20 years ago, like take racing games. If you play an old school racing game, basically you just see the car, and that's kind of it. If you look at racing games now, you've got like the odometer and what place you're in and, you know, how many kilometers you're going. Like there's all this visual feedback and meters all over the place. So I think with piano, when we're kind of missing that, we not only don't have a roadmap, we have to figure out the roadmap ourselves. We have to figure out our own rules of the game. But we also don't have as in-your-face feedback. And I'm resisting every urge to get one of those Meta headsets to recreate that. I don't think we need to go there. But having that sort of visual feedback, that concept of visual feedback, I do think is very important. So I'll show you a few ways you can try this. I would encourage you to try this at home, and I would be curious if anybody finds it helpful. So going back to this minuet and rondo analogy, and I think Michelle asked, you got to be kidding me, you had a Minecraft experiment. Well, if you go back on our YouTube channel, or if you just go into Google, just type piano teacher tries to learn Minecraft, and you'll see our 2 videos. The first video was a completely unedited, Jonathan's very first hour of trying to learn how to play Minecraft. It's a bit boring, probably just a little pathetic. And then the second video, I actually recruited one of my students to sort of be my coach, because I have lots of students who are way more experienced that would be in a place to show me how to do this. So that second video is me playing Minecraft for another hour, but this time with my student, telling me what to do along the way. So do check those out. Tell me if it's worth making a part 3, and try not to laugh too much. I tried my best on there. Jay Shu says, I think it would be cool to have an AI teacher, though. You know, it's interesting. I think maybe an AI practice buddy could be kind of interesting. I think we're a really far away from that yet, just to share an honest opinion, because AI is one of those things that we're going to be talking about again and again and again. But as we're talking about awareness being such an important part of this, and understanding what's going wrong and what we need to fix and what we need to tweak, I think AI has a really long way to go before it really develops empathy and experience. I think that's one of the most wonderful things about having a really good teacher, is having a teacher that's tuned in to not just a cookie cutter approach, which I think a lot of AI just has the universe sort of fed into it. But finding a teacher that doesn't just do the same thing with everybody, but finds your specific needs and isms, and figures out what makes you click, what inspires you, things like that. So I do think an AI practice buddy could be cool. Like, I wish if there were a way I could like download my brain into this like fun little robot that just like sat right there and could just like say all the stuff that I say to my students in lessons, but they could do it at home. Maybe you could have like a Hello Kitty head or something, you know, non-threatening. Although a Hello Kitty head with a Jonathan voice might be a little strange. But thank you for opening up the discussion. That's always fun. I think Michelle also asked if this piece is hard. This comes from the level 1 Royal Conservatory book, or actually it might come from level 2. Hard is always a matter of perspective. If you're just starting piano, if you're on like, you know, the on your second year, yeah, it would probably be pretty challenging. If you've been playing for several years, it would probably be, you know, reasonably sight readable. So just to answer that question. And now let's talk about some ways you can provide visual feedback, because I know we went off on a couple of fun little side quests there, but the biggest challenge is with piano is with this repetitive process that we know will work. We have the science, we have the data that shows it'll work. The challenge is that it's just not that exciting. It gets more and more exciting as we go, but in the moment, it's going to feel like you're not getting anywhere, even though you're progressing quite fast. So there are a few ways you can provide that sort of visual feedback for yourself in the style of, well, not exactly in the style of Minecraft or video games, but as close as we can. So some students will have their bracket. So the brackets are sort of like symbolic of our building blocks of preparing this piece of music. And what they may do is every time they get a successful rep, they put a check mark. Some students, if they don't want to like mess up their music, they might make photocopies of this so that they can put all these checks and then just toss it after. But you get a rep, there's your check. You get another good rep, another one, another good rep, another. And I think there's just something about seeing that visual sign of progress that sort of harnesses that power of feeling like we're getting some feedback and we're going somewhere. Another thing you could do, it's basically the same idea, but you could take a piece of paper, just a blank piece of paper, and every time you get a good rep, check mark. I don't think you can see it. Yeah, check mark. Or if you're the creative type, you can draw a map. You can make your own sort of journey game board or whatever, and see every time you do one of these repetitive things, you're moving forward. Or this is my personal favorite, if you have Legos at home, what you can do is every time you accomplish one of these stepping stones, you get a Lego out. You do several more reps, another Lego piece. Do a bunch more reps, get your 5 in a row, another Lego piece. And then as time goes by, you have this visual representation of your progress. I'd love to know what you think of that in the chat. If you think it's something that could be exciting for your practice, if you're like, really, Jonathan, I thought this was going to be better, or anything that you've tried with this. But the goal of this live stream, if I can get just 2 ideas across to you to change your practice, to learn new pieces faster than you ever thought possible, will be to set up that map, that step-by-step guide, section, lots of reps. And second, find a way to enjoy that process by myelinating, doing lots of repetitions of these small chunks, and finding a way to enjoy that, usually with some kind of visual thing, visual representation that just gets you excited, where you can actually see the progress that you're making. All right, well, it's reassuring to know that we have some people saying they're going to try that. Michelle asked, what does that mean? I'm assuming you mean myelination. You might have missed it at the beginning, but we were talking about how myelination is that biological process that happens in your body where when you practice something correctly, very important point there, when you practice something correctly many, many, many times in a row, that's the process that happens inside your body where you basically don't have to think about the actions anymore. And you get to the point where you just can enjoy the music. You don't really have to think about it. And so finally, we have a Kahoot game. And then for those who want to stick around, I actually have a brand new piece of music that I loaded into my iPad. If you want to see sort of a real world example of this on a piece that's quite a bit more advanced. And I'll just sort of narrate the process if you want to stick around for that. But the last idea that I wanted to get across to you, and I'm going to need a blank page for this. Blank page. Okay. Let's see, can we see that there? Okay, awesome. So a lot of people think that excitement, all right, well, that should be the word excitement if you can't read it. Excitement about music leads to practice, leads to progress. And we'll say, I'll put the in parentheses, I'll put the word process here, because not just any kind of practice, but practice with a process. So most people think that this is where it starts. You have to be excited about piano. Yeah, we're going to get this, and then we're going to practice. It's not really how it works, especially if you've gone a long break without practicing. Like, let's say you got really sick or you just got too busy and many weeks went by. If you're anything like me, it takes a lot of effort to get that first sit down back at the piano. So in reality, it actually starts here. It starts with practice. So again, you don't have to like it. You just have to follow the process. And if you stick with it long enough, be obsessed with the process, step by step, myelination, that practice is going to lead to progress. Okay? And then it's the progress that you feel, because we naturally like to do things that feel good. That's what leads to the excitement. That leads to the fun stuff about practicing. And then that, theoretically, that excitement leads to more practice. And then we start this beautiful cycle. But psychologically or mindset-wise, you want to make sure you're starting in the right place. So it doesn't start with excitement. Excitement's part of it, but it starts with practice, mindful practice, following a process that leads to progress, that leads to excitement. Let's see, Jay Shu said, what if there's a really difficult passage? Similar approach. Yes, absolutely. Again, it's all breaking it down to that smallest thing that you can do correctly the first time. And then you can repeat it many, many times. And then you can build on that. So sometimes, excuse me, I just need a quick sip of water. So if I'm practicing something that's especially difficult, tons of notes, not even sure where to start, I might just start with 2 notes. Just embrace the process of playing those 2 notes really well, really correctly, and then add a few more, and then add a few more, maybe add the right hand. So you see what I mean? So you want to break it down as much as you can. And there's always a point. You could take Rachmaninoff Third Concerto, one of the hardest pieces ever composed for the piano. There is some speed that you can play it accurately, even if it's at, quarter note equals 10 or something like that. So there's always a way you can break it down, whether it's the amount of music, whether it's one hand, or it's just a handful of notes. But that's the sort of, I usually call it a seed. That's where you want to start, and then your progress kind of grows from there. I hope that sort of answers the question. And I like what I'm reading here about loving the feeling of finishing a new piece. Emily agrees. So yes, and that's the goal of this whole thing, so that you can learn your pieces faster. And by learning pieces faster, you enjoy making music more. Okay, so let's try this Kahoot game. We had a reasonably successful one last attempt. It'll be a slightly shorter one this time. And then for those who want to stick around after the Kahoot game, I'm going to start learning a Beethoven sonata that I've never touched before. So you'll see my sort of leading by example process here. So if you've never played Kahoot before, you'll want to either have a second device at the ready, or you want to open another window at your computer. It'll be about 7 questions. All the questions will come from our little live stream today. All right, and this happened yesterday too, so I just need to reload the screen. But if you go to kahoot.it on your device, the game pin is 7946483. Hang tight while I just fix this screen really quick. All right, there we go. Just gonna resize this screen here. All right, we got some people coming in, so that's always reassuring. We've got Henry, we've got Chris, welcome. So again, you'll want a second device, or you'll want another another window open on your browser. Kahoot.it, game pin is 7946483. We have Herkimer joining us. Awesome. Love that name. Oh, Michelle joining us again. I remember your name from yesterday. Very distinctive name. Love it. And just curious, is the music from the game coming through? It worked okay yesterday, but a lot of this live streaming thing is still pretty new for us at South Shore Piano School. All right, we'll give it another, we'll give it 1 more minute for folks to join. So if you're just popping into the YouTube live, we're starting our Kahoot match on the topic of mindful practice. You're going to either go on a separate device or a separate window, go to kahoot.it and enter the game pin 7946483. And just a side note, we are on a little bit of a delay. I think it's about 5 seconds from when I do stuff on my end to when you see it on your YouTube screen. So do not fear. Or actually, let me rephrase that. Pay attention to your device, number 1. And then as we go, just note that you're going to see the questions on your device or on your window before you hear me start talking about it. I think my window may have frozen one more time. It froze twice yesterday. I want to see if we can get that down to like not. All right. Well, we're waiting for a few more people to join. I'm going to fix one more thing, and I think we should be good to go. All right. There we go. We will add this to our troubleshooting list for the next time we run one of these. Go. Okay, I think we should probably start before we start losing people. So with that, let us begin our Kahoot match. So the first question is, how do you learn a new piece as quickly as possible? We're frozen again. All right, hopefully. Oh, sorry. The first question is actually, what is the biological process that makes you able to play piano much more effortlessly? Is it coordination, myelination, coronation, or constipation? Anybody's game so far? All right, did that bring us back? All right, good. Hopefully, if I lose the window on YouTube Live, we can just go by narration. But it looks like almost everybody got it. So yes, myelination is that process by which, through repetitive mindful practice, we succeed at music. All right, so let's see our scores. All right, Herkimer on top, followed by Henry, Chris, Henry, other Henry, and Michelle. All right, let's continue on to the next question. So we have a quiz. What is the key to building good practice habits? Is it practicing with mindfulness and repetition, practicing until frustrated, jumping to the easiest parts first, or practicing while watching cat videos? Well done. I'm so proud of you. Yes, practicing with mindfulness and repetition. All right, Chris has jumped up to the top, followed by Herkimer, Henry Squared, and Michelle. All right, let's continue. Next, true or false? You need to be talented for practice to be fun. True or false? You need to be talented. Think about what we talked about talent, if you were here for that part. Oh, yes. Another 100%. So talent largely is a myth. And actually, I forgot to say this earlier. If you go to somebody you consider talented and you say, wow, you're so talented, they'll probably be really nice. But I've talked to a lot of people who actually get kind of offended by that because they feel like it sort of overlooks the thousands of hours of work they put in. So no, you don't need to be talented for practicing to be fun. So with that, let's see how that may change things. Herkimer back to the top, followed by Chris, 2 Henrys, and an Emily. All right, let's continue. Question 4 of 6. What's the main reason people struggle with repetitive practice? It's too easy, they're secretly ninjas, it's boring, or repetition makes perfect sense to everyone else. All right, nicely done. Yes, the main reason, at least in our experience, is repetitive practice is too boring and people would much rather watch Netflix or play Minecraft. And repetition, that was kind of a joke one, but yeah, repetition I don't think makes sense to most people. Well, with that, let's see if that changes anything. All right, the scores stand as they are. Let's go on. Next, another quiz. What is the reality about progress and excitement? Practice leads to progress, which leads to excitement. Excitement causes instant progress. Progress only happens at night, or the universe rewards excitement with better piano skills. All right, well done. Yes, practice is the great myth. Practice is that first step, leads to progress. Progress leads to the excitement. Let's see if that changes anything. Henry's jumped up. Still could be anybody's game based on this last question, which I can't remember. Yes, how can you make repetitive practice a little more exciting? Stop practicing, add visual indicators of progress, play Minecraft every few minutes, or start a YouTube channel. Well done, 100%. So this will just come down to how fast people answered the question. So let's see what we got. In third place, we've got Chris. Congratulations, Chris. In second place, we've got Henry with the smiley. And number 1, first place is Herkimer. Well done. Well done. Congratulations to all our players. In fourth and fifth place, we had Henry and Emily. And even if you weren't a winner today, please join us as we do more of these. It's all about the learning process, even if you got a question wrong. And now we're going to X out of that. Come back to our main screen. And I'd like to invite you, if you haven't had enough yet, I'm going to do a little bit of a demonstration here of how this whole approaching a brand new piece of music works with a brand new piece of music. For me, I literally just grabbed something off my bookshelf and opened it. So if you want to stick around and see how I would approach something like this to see what you can sort of take away from your own practice, I'd invite you to stick around. This piece is a Beethoven sonata. Beethoven wrote 32 of these. Here we go. And hopefully you can see that okay. The print is a little small, but this is a piece. Oh, thank you, Emily. Glad you enjoyed that. Glad you thought it was fun. We'll be doing more of those. So this is I think one of the earlier Beethoven sonatas, and I've heard it before. I've heard students play it before in college and whatnot, but I've never actually played this. So I wanted to try to sort of lead by example here with how I might practice a piece like this. So I'm just going to kind of dive in and narrate my practice thought process. If you've caught any of our other practice videos, I I always say it's easiest to start with a goal here. Not easiest, it's essential to start with a goal and set a timer. For now, let's say I'm going to make my practice session 20 minutes. So I'll set my timer for 20 minutes. But before I set the timer, I want to set a goal here for my practice session and think about what's manageable, design my plan, just like that Lego analogy. We talked about what's my set of instructions going to be. And just thinking about my sight reading level, I feel like once I get to, I'm sort of scanning the music for which parts I think will be easier for me to play, which ones are going to require a bit more time, a bit more breakdown. And let's say my goal, this might be a bit ambitious, but let's say that my goal is to try to get down to here right now. Oh, we're on a roll with the iPad screen, and that seems to have frozen. All right, hang tight. Don't leave if you want to see our practice demonstration. We will get this fixed by the next time we do one of these things. Let's see, one moment. Oh, that's right. I have to, well, you're seeing my activity monitor right now. Very exciting, I know. All right, and now we want to share. Okay, we're back. All right. If you're curious, the application I use, which is fantastic when it works, is called OBS that I have running through StreamYard, which we use for our live streams. Except for some reason, it does this from time to time where the iPad screen freezes on us. All right, we almost have it back on. All right, there we go. I just need to adjust this slightly, and then we'll get back on track. And so as I'm doing this, just to reiterate, so I'm going to try to get to where you see those two lines there. It'll be a little clearer once I resize this. And my set of Lego style instructions is basically going to be to take this bit by bit. Maybe I'll leave it like that. And I'll move this a little further over, just so you can see more of the music and you can see my hands down here. So usually I don't necessarily, it depends on, every person's a little bit different. Some people might want to figure out all their practice sections right away. Personally, I like to kind of do it as I go. So I might try the beginning, and let's say my first practice chunk as I piece this together will be to here. That seems pretty manageable. I'm going to start slow because it's a brand new piece that I haven't touched before. And let's just see how it goes. So we got... So from my level, reasonably sight readable. Again, exercising that awareness. There were some fingerings here I need to sort out. So usually I'll go through and put fingerings in because I don't want to learn with a bunch of, different fingerings. And then, so using the same fingerings with this repetitive process is just important as playing correctly, because if you use different fingers every time, it's like learning it 20 different ways, and that myelination process isn't going to stick. I forgot to turn my timer on. All right, our 20-minute timer has officially started. So let's see if I can get, for now, I'll settle for 3 reps in a row at a slower speed. Realistically, I'm not going to get this learned perfectly at full tempo right now. So again, we want to start with what we can do correctly many times in a row and calmly as well. So, all right, let's give this a try. Okay, I'm happy with that one. That was a successful one. So when we do it once, we do it again. This trill, these trills are always kind of awkward for me, so I might make a subsection of this, and this sort of addresses, I think, what Emily was asking about harder passages, how to approach that. Just take the tough part, in this case, that trill, and just do that a bunch of times. And when I say a lot, I mean I'll do a lot. And if you have any questions about this as we go ahead and put it in the chat. We can discuss some more. And you can even slow it down a bit. All right, that's feeling better. One thing I forgot to mention in sort of the main presentation is the importance of sleep with this myelination process. So even if today I don't have this perfected, when I come back to this, it will feel more comfortable. It's almost like magic. So try this. If it's not too late, wherever you're watching from, try this repetitive process. Get a good night's sleep, come back to it the next day. Let us know if it feels easier to play. So now that I've kind of, banged out that one chunk a whole bunch of times, now I'm going to try putting it back into the sort of bigger section. All right, that felt pretty good. And that's actually pretty close to the actual speed. So I'm going to try to do that 2 more times. All right, and 1 more. Okay, so there's my 3. I'm going to move on to the next step in my battle plan. And then this is another reason why I like using the iPad, because I can erase these sort of section brackets and then redistribute them. So let me figure out how far I want to go for my next bit. Okay, I'm going to go up to here. And I may change this later, but let's see how that goes. Again, I'm going to start on the slow side. But even as I was kind of sight reading through this right now, and just as an aside, I purposely picked a piece that wasn't going to be like crazy hard, because I didn't want to bore you to death with me working out these tiniest of things for the entire demo practice session. But as I was playing through that chunk there, this is where the self-awareness bit comes in, because I felt pretty uneasy right here. Like I had that feeling, if you can relate to it, in your chest, where it's like, oh, what fingerings do we use there? Is this going to go okay? So I'm going to take that as a sign to not run away from it and just do the easy stuff, but to lean hard into it and dissect that. So what I might do is take, again, just like I did with the trill from earlier, I'll use a different color to illustrate this. I might try here to here. And again, I'm trying to kickstart the myelination process with this. So coming into it. Okay. And as I'm kind of picking at it, I'm noticing that the sort of uneasiness comes from not being sure which fingerings to use. So what I'm going to do is 1, 2, 3. I write in a lot of fingerings in my music. When I was in my master's degree, it seemed like nobody ever wrote fingerings in their music. I never really understood that. I'm quite, I think copious is the right word for the number of fingerings I'll actually write in, so that I don't have to like think about this as much, and I've already thought it through. So again, I'm going to take this part that gave me a little bit of uneasiness, and I'm just going to pound it and do it a whole bunch of times. Let's try it. And again. And again. And again. Okay, so that's feeling like it's integrated a little bit more. So now I'm going to put it back in the larger section. So let's try. And that felt pretty good. This part here, I also felt a little bit of unease. So again, I'll take that and dissect that, hammer that in several times. It isn't anything crazy about the fingerings. You have 5. It's just when I see that, my brain wants to do 5, 3, 4, 2. So sometimes what I'll do in my music is just write like a big 2 there to remind me that 2 is the better option. If I did 3, I mean, I could swing it, but these fingers 2, 3, and 4 just generally don't like to play that nice together. Oh, and I forgot to include my visual cues here. So I'm actually going to use Legos for this one. So I got one section down. So there's the first Lego of my Lego piece. I'll show you the structure as it goes. Chris had something. He was saying, I wish Fourscore had layer options so I can take notes for specific lessons and new notes a separate time without making music messy or without having to erase all of it. I have good news for you. There is actually a layers option. So this app that we're looking at right now is called Fourscore. You can't really see the annotation options. I actually haven't used the layer option in a while, but since this is, let's see. You know what? I thought it did have a layer option. Maybe I'm thinking of a different app. I was almost certain there's a layer option here. Maybe it's under rearrange. Okay, I will look that up because I'm almost certain that I discovered a layer option in here. Wait, let me take one more peek here at the options. Fourscore, if you're in need of any kind of like music PDF annotator, it's meant for music, but it's even, you know, it's used for, I mean, you can use it for other stuff too. It's just so versatile. You know what? Maybe it was under. I know I saw this. Hang on. If the rest of the crowd will let me do a quick aside here for the greater good. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Yes, layers. You see that? So let me see if I can get that into the screen, into the shot a little better. It's right there. So when you're in the annotation screen, you can just tap this this layers button in the top right corner, and there you have layers. So if I want to hide everything that I just wrote, I can just hit that and it's gone. And if you want to add a different layer where say in this layer, so say I want to get rid of this layer, and in this layer, I want to draw something else, I can get rid of that and show that, or I can show both at the same time. All right, that made me so happy that we could clarify that. And now let me see if I can rearrange my window again. Here, let's make it a little larger. Okay, so I'm going to actually, now that I did that, let me bring back my other layer, get rid of that layer. Go back to our chat. You're very welcome, Chris, for showing you the layer option. So yeah, again, this app is called Fourscore. I think it's really helpful, especially for writing down all these like sort of section practicey things. I'm going to reset my timer just because we went off on that fun little escapade. Here, why don't we do like another? I'm gonna go ahead, since I'm having fun and it seems like a lot of people are still here, hopefully getting a lot out of this. I'll go ahead and set it for 30 minutes. And I want to reassess my goal. I changed my mind. I think I want to try to get to the bottom of this first page. Now, of course, for some reason, let's see. Oh, I'm in the wrong layer. That's why. All right. So fun fact, when you're in the wrong layer, you can't change your annotations. You know what? Just for fun, let's just try to get to the end of the page since we're going to extend this a little bit for those who want to stick around. And for those just joining, we're going step by step through my demonstration of this practice process. I have my one Lego representing my progress so far. And I'm working on this second section right here. I sort of pounded in some of the harder parts. Now let's see if I can do that bigger section 3 times in a row here. So. Okay, wasn't perfect, and I always go for 100% accuracy, so I'm going to slow it down a little bit. All right, that was a good one. So now I'm going to see if I can do 2 more of that. All right, and again. Okay, cool. And that's even, somewhat at tempo. So what I'm going to do now, actually, before I go on to the next bit, I'm going to put these together, kind of like I'm building a house. And I'm going to try everything that I learned. For now, I'll just settle for 1 rep. I just want to make sure there isn't going to be anything funny with the transition point from the first section to the second section. I feel reasonably good about that. I'm going to get rid of this circle because I don't think I need that. That was more for you guys. And let's make our next practice chunk now. So we've successfully learned up through measure 8. And because I know how this process, this myelination process works, I know that's going to feel even better when I come back to it tomorrow. So let's try it from here now. So this is measure 9. And I'm going to sort of assess what makes sense for a chunk that I could reasonably get 3 times in a row. Whoops, I'll mark that sharp in there. You know, I feel reasonably, since this isn't too hard for me to sight read, I feel good about doing a slightly longer chunk. So again, I'm kind of reading through what I think will be my next section to figure out what's manageable to do 3 times in a row without errors. So let's give that a try. And again, I felt this is where the self-awareness bit comes in, when you feel that sort of tingle in your gut, when it's like, oh, here's a part that's going to be hard. Take that as a cue to pound that section in. Isolate it, do it slower. Here, I'll do this in brackets. So let's say we do, and again, and again, and again. And sometimes, you know, if I'm getting really bored, I'll do something a little nutty and do like, you know, or something. You know, it's okay to be silly. It's okay to be even creative with this. This piano practicing thing. So again, I'm going to pound that in a little bit more. And again. Okay, so now I'm going to put it back into the hole. So put it back in the context. I'll erase these lines here. Okay, so let's put that back into the main section. Okay, that felt good. That felt good, reasonably good. And again, I'd invite anybody here in the comments or in the chats to ask any questions, even give some suggestions, things you think I could do better. If you're just joining us, I'm demonstrating this process of going section by section by section to learn a brand new piece of music as quickly as you possibly can. All right, so I'm going to do that section again. I got 1 good rep. I always try to go for at least 3. So let's go ahead and try it again. I didn't like that. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. So that didn't feel very good. So I'm going to take that as a cue to do that many, many, many times. So when I get there, my thumb will be on the G. And then we have some suggested fingerings for this turnaround. So we'll do... Personally, I think 2 makes a little more sense there than 3. Some fingerings, it's important to keep in mind that fingerings with this level are usually more suggestions by the editor than necessarily sort of like the Bible. And just, yeah. It's always important to have water close by when you're practicing. Okay, and let's go ahead and try that again. All right, I think that's good. I guess the 4 suggestion is because my 4 is already there, so I guess that sort of makes sense. The infinity looking symbol, yes, that's a turnaround. So basically a turnaround means it's the note above, back, below, and then back. So all right, we'll do like 3 more of that. And again. And again. And again. All right, cool. All right, we'll take that. Okay, so now let's go back to measure 9, put it back in the hole. I'm feeling quite a bit better about those uncomfortable places. So now let's see how it goes again, starting from measure 9. All right, that was a good one. I was happy with that. So I want to do that 2 more times. and one more for now. Okay, cool. So 3 in a row. Now I'm going to take this chunk out and put that together again just to see if there are going to be any other weirdisms when I put this all together. So I've done this bit by bit. I'm going to celebrate my getting that next chunk together with adding another piece of Lego. I'm not putting together a specific Lego set. I'm just adding another Lego so I can visually sort of see my progress. And let's try it from the beginning to where we just stopped. And let's see if anything weird happens. Okay, that's pretty good. I messed up on some of these left-hand chords, ironically. That should have been like the easiest part. So let me try that again. So I'm going to try that bit one more time just for my peace of mind. And you know what? I've got 21 minutes left on the clock. I'm so thrilled that so many of you stayed. Maybe I'll be so excited. Again, practice equals progress equals excitement. Maybe I'll even keep going for those who want to stick around and really see how this plays out. So I'm going to try that section again. I took this as 2 smaller chunks, did each of those 3 times. I'm going to put it together now. Not necessarily to do 3 times, but just to see if anything weird's going to happen with any transition spots. So we've got... Okay, that's feeling pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and thank you for the kind words, Chris. Glad we can inspire you. I'm going to get rid of this chunk now. I'm on to the next bit. Again, building the piece section by section. Lots of reps, trying to get that myelination process going, trying to encourage you at home to practice the same way. And every time you practice something many, many, many times in a row, feel like you're wearing a badge of honor, joining the ranks of the awesome practicers to learn pieces faster than you ever thought possible. So this next bit, I think I could actually sight read this decently, but now watch me do terribly. Let's see. Okay, I think that's okay, but I have to do it a bit slower. I don't feel confident about doing it that speed, getting it so many times in a row. So let me go ahead and slow the speed down a little bit, but again, aiming for that coveted 3 in a row. Okay. And again, slow isn't a bad thing. It's a part of the process. If I were to do it faster and making lots of mistakes, it'll ultimately take longer to learn this. So let me go ahead and try it 2 more times at that slower speed. Okay, I'll take that. And then here's number 3. All right, cool. And I'm admittedly focusing mostly on notes and rhythms. As I continue living with the piece more, I'll add more of the expression and the phrasing and things like that. Not that I can't do that now, but that's just where I am today. So it'll change a little bit different depending on the mood you're in, the time of day, and what kind of piece you're working on. But as long as you're repeating things, that's the most important thing. I'm going to add another one here. So now we're up to 3 blocks. I'm going to pause for one question I just saw come in. I'm going to pause my timer. Marty asked, oh, this is a good question. I'll pull it up here. Does it help that you had presumably heard this piece a number of times? Yes, I do think it does help, certainly, to listen, to a piece a lot. I think it helps to listen to multiple interpretations of it when it comes to classical music. It's one of the interesting things where you can hear 5 people play the exact same piece, but each one will sound a bit different. So that's what we call interpretation. When some people add crescendos here and decrescendos here, there's not like one way that everybody has to perform something. The only times I'm a little weary about listening too much, and this applies more to kids, I think, is when they rely on, like, they can't play a piece of music without having heard it first, and they're learning more from copying or recording than learning a piece of music. I doubt you're in that category. That's just my sixth sense talking. But I don't think anything beats this process. I do think hearing a piece of music that, your ear will tell you if you're playing a wrong note or something like that. That's one thing, because I think one of the tricky things about learning a new piece of music is sometimes you can play a wrong note that sounds right. So that's where I think having the sort of sound in your ear from having listened to recordings can be helpful. I hope that answers the question, Marty. Thank you for raising such an insightful question. Oh, no, thanks, Chris. Chris had a very nice comment. I like the musicality you add to it, even though I don't see dynamics notated. Thank you. Yeah, that's what's often called phrasing. So, like, for example, yes, there aren't really many dynamics here, and not to overgeneralize, but usually when notes go up, you can add like a little crescendo, like for example here, da dee da dee da dee da, or actually no, more like dee dee da dee da. This is sort of a tension moment, dee dum. That's where music theory comes in and can be really helpful. So again, as I said, not to overgeneralize, and then I'm doing the opposite of the thing I said, and then you can do the same thing here, dee dee da dee da dee da. So rather than every note sounding the same, not sure if it's going to come across here. I'll mute my microphone. So, and then same thing for the next one. So that's what we call phrasing, when we add those little crescendos and decrescendos. In theory, there shouldn't be a right or a wrong way, but for the listener, some ways might make more sense than other ways. The most important thing is that you have some kind of interpretation to give the music some direction, rather than just playing the notes in the rhythms. And then, yes, Chris said semitones are dissonant to a diminuent, so a diminuent note makes it beautiful. Thank you. Yes, words to live by. So, so getting back to our process, I'm up to 3 Lego blocks on my visual learning journey here. I'll start my timer again. Let's see. So, and I've already forgotten. Did I do all this already? I'll go ahead and play it one more time, just for my peace of mind. So again, I'm gonna play the sort of aggregate. So all the small sections I've learned, I'm gonna try to put them together now. All right, cool. And with a repetitive thing like there I might do maybe a crescendo or something. And then second theme. Or so I might include a different sort of tone or a different color there. But that's an aside. I'm going to continue on my repetitive practice journey. I'm feeling good about that chunk, so I'm going to leave that behind. I have to figure out my next chunk that I'm going to do several times in a row. And again, the way, you don't necessarily have to do it like this, but what I like to do is sight read a little bit, get a sense of what I can get to 3 times in a row, minimum, if not more. And then once I'm getting to the land of like, yeah, I don't think this is going to be manageable to even get a couple times in a row, that's where I want to cut it. So I'm going to sight read through this a little bit. You know, so over the years, I've come to learn to trust my gut with this, and I encourage you to do the same. But originally, I was thinking I could get to here, but then I was like, you know what? This part, as simple as it sounds, is actually a bit technically challenging. So I think I'm going to cut it off here. So this bit, I think I'll be able to get quickly, and then I'm going to spend more time here. Again, it's the planning, it's listening to your gut, and then executing. So yeah, I figured that would go pretty fast. So okay. Maybe a couple more times. All right, we'll take that. All right. Okay, I think that's good. So that was like 4 or 5 times or so. And then this next part, like I said, as simple as it sounds, with the fingerings and the articulation. So that's where we're connecting legato, when we're separating, where there is no slur there. The right hand is actually more challenging than it necessarily looks here. So I'm going to actually, for this bit, start with the right hand because that's the part that I'm most sort of nervous about. So I think the implied fingering here is 3-2. I'll go ahead and mark that in. Separate. Okay, that's feeling pretty good. Okay. And again, with all these reps, I'm starting that myelination process. And again. I'll do it 2 more times. Okay, that's feeling more comfortable. So now I'm going to add it to the left hand. Anytime we add a new thing, I think in general it's helpful to slow it down a little bit. So maybe. Yeah, that feels way better than the first time I did it. All right. All right, good. In the chat, is anybody inspired by this, to take these small bits and just practice them a ridiculous number of times in a row, in the big picture of progress as you're watching this sort of narrated practice session? So now you might recall I felt pretty uneasy about going all the way from here to here because of this chunk. Now let's see how it goes. Hopefully I don't have to eat my words, but let's see how it goes now that I've sort of dissected that and played each one several times in a row. So. Oh yeah, way better than the first time. Oh, not so good. So that transition there. I'm gonna put a big 3 there to remind me to use third finger. Let's try that again. All right, yeah, that's feeling pretty good. I'm probably gonna do it a little slower. Again, because it's not necessarily speed right now, it's the repetitions, because I know with this myelination biological process we've been talking about, when I come back tomorrow, it's going to feel better because I've kickstarted that process. So. All right, good. All right, let's do 3 more of that. All right, and 1 more. I was on such a good track. All right, so when I make a mistake, I have to do it like 3 or 4 more times before I can feel good about continuing. So thank you for your patience. So let's go ahead and try that 3 more times. Maybe a little slower. I think I was getting a little overly ambitious with the speed there. All right, and we're gonna enjoy the ride. I'm gonna relax. I'm gonna try to be no rush. All right, let's try it again. I might slow it down even more. Okay. All right. All right, we'll try 2 more times. I'm not going to get too ambitious this time, playing it too fast. So let's try. All right, last one. All right, now that I've done it several times, I might try speeding it up the tiniest bit. This is where sometimes I like to use the metronome. And what I'll often do, I'm not going to do it necessarily right now, but in my music, I'll put today's date. So in this case, it's November 13th, and I might say like quarter note equals, 80 or something like that. So when I come back the next day, I know how fast I got it. I'm not necessarily going to care about that too much right now, but I do want to try it a couple times just a little faster, just to try to put it with the sections that I've already learned. So maybe. Okay, that's already feeling better. All right, one more. The curse of number 3. All right, I'm just going to give it 2 more tries, and then I'm going to go on to the next bit. Okay, 1. Here's 2. Okay, we'll take that. All right, so now we're going to go on to the next bit. Just a reminder, here's our goal. I'm going to go ahead and add another Lego brick to my collection. So this represents each of these chunks that I've worked on so much. So I have a visual indicator, something to be excited about. But especially if you just tuned in, this is sort of I want to do like a checkered flag thing. It's like the finish line for now. It's like it kind of looks like a checkered flag. All right. So just trying to reach the end of the page, illustrating this process of learning a brand new piece from scratch, section by section, lots of repetitions, doing anything to enjoy the process, which this probably goes without saying, but I think just doing the live stream as well does make me automatically more engaged with the process because I know a bunch of people are watching me. But do drop in the chat because we'll probably wrap up in 10 or 15 minutes or so. Any lingering questions you have, whether it's about the practice process or just general questions about piano playing, we'll do one more Q&A. But let's see if we can wrap this page up in the next 10 minutes. So again, I'm going to do a little sight reading, see how far I can, how big I want my next practice chunk to be. So. All right, so this is one of those places where people get in big arguments like, all right, so the suggested fingering is 2, 1, 3, 2. And I'm sure there's some kind of divine reason for this. I'm wondering why not just use 3, 5, 4, 3, 3, 2, 2, 2, 1. Some people are very opposed to the idea of using the same finger for repeated notes, and I get that when it's like a really fast passage like that, but something like this. I mean, maybe the idea was to switch fingers to force your hand to lift and then give a little bit of an emphasis there. I'm not sure, so I'm going to put a question mark here because I might change my fingerings later. But I'm not necessarily sold on that fingering enough to trade an easier one for it. So I'm just going to do 3, 2. Okay, you know what? I feel okay about going from there to the end of the page, maybe minus the last 3 eighth notes. So. See, I'm already second guessing that fingering. The joy of fingerings. Okay, so let's. Okay, I'll take that. So let's see if we can do like 2 more of that. We'll celebrate by playing this entire page that I've learned from scratch over the last 45 minutes or so of this live stream. Okay, cool. It feels a little on the edge, like I'm driving a car just a little too fast. So I'm going to dial it back just a little bit. Okay, that felt good. I didn't feel like I was in a car that's about to, careen off the road at any moment. So I'll do that 2 more times. Okay, I made one little blip in there, but I'm going to forgive myself for that for now. Okay, I'll do one more, and then I think I'll go ahead and put it all together. Okay, so now we've officially completed our goal for this practice session, which is to learn this entire first page. Now I'm going to try to put all of it together, because one thing I do think helps at the end of a practice session is to sort of, as the sort of dessert at the end, just do a playthrough of everything that you've worked on bit by bit, brick by brick. Speaking of bricks, if you're just tuning in, maybe you didn't catch the beginning. Thank you, Chris. Yes, my Lego block. So this is my visual indicator of my progress, like I'm playing a video game, except it's not like a video game at all. We're just making our own visual indicator of success and progress. And then I will answer any questions. I see a few of them in the chat, and I will get to those. But for now, before my timer runs out, I want to give one run through. And here, since we're approaching the end of my practice session, I'll forgive myself for any little blips that may occur. So we've got, whoops, wrong pedal. And then whatever's on the second page. All right, that felt pretty good. And again, I had never looked at this piece. I'd heard it before in the context of life and being a music major, but I never analyzed it. This is just my first experience learning it bit by bit to sort of give you, the audience, sort of an insight in what this actually looks like in practice. But even though this is a pretty advanced piece of music, you can apply this to your music whatever level you are, even if you're a total beginner. Even if you're doing easy pieces in a method book, you can put your brackets in, small sections, mindful practice, lots of repetitions, and then do whatever you need to do to make that process fun. All right, so last call for any questions on the chat. I'm just going to go through from where I last left off. Chris had a question. How do you get better at sight reading both clefs simultaneously? I can typically sight read hands independently, but it takes forever for me to get the hands to coordinate. Yeah, that's interesting. So it is a fairly common challenge. I'm curious. I think you mentioned that you also play the violin, so it might also be sort of a violin creeping thing, sort of not creeping in, but maybe it's just because with one instrument you're so used to doing the treble clef that when you go to the grand staff, maybe that throws some curveballs in. I'm not sure, but let's see how I want to best answer that. I think part of it. Oh, you don't play the violin. Oh, I'm thinking of somebody else who commented earlier. I'm sorry. All right, forget all that I just said. Although if you are watching and you do play the violin, then yes, I think that advice maybe does apply a little bit. So I think one thing that would probably help, kind of like I alluded to earlier, is just playing lots of much easier music. I think you mentioned that you can do, let me see if I can find the question. You can sight read hands independently, but it takes a while to get the hands coordinate. I think there's two components to it. I think one of it is probably to think about where you're actually looking on the page. If you sort of think of your eyes as being like a camera, you might be sort of zooming in on one clef or zooming in on the other clef. I would encourage you to maybe try to pan that out and look at both clefs at the same time, and then focus on intervallic reading if you're not doing that already. Intervallic reading is where you're not worried about note individual like note letter names, but you're looking at the distance between the notes. We call those the intervals, and reading by shape. And then also doing it with much easier music. If you're finding it's a challenge to do this, just find easier music. Some people get a little discouraged with this, but I would encourage you to think of it as you're trying to build a new skill that maybe is a challenge right now, and to do that kind of like we were doing with this piece and with this live stream, starting with what you can do, and that doesn't apply just to sections of a piece of music, but it also applies to abilities, one being able to read in both clefs fluently. So I would just do a lot of exploring, find some easy pieces that you're able to practice this and have a reasonable amount of success, and then build up from there. Is that what I would suggest? Let me know if that suggestion is helpful at all, or if there's anything else I might be able to recommend. And I think I saw a couple other questions. Thank you all for the very nice words about my patience with section practice and repetition. I would encourage you to do this at home, though. If there's one thing you get from this, it's, again, that when you practice with these small sections with lots of reps, take it as a badge of honor for your piano journey. Chris said, could you recommend a typical practice routine? How long to work on scales, about sight reading, technique, repertoire? Maybe I'm overthinking it. I don't think you can ever overthink the practice routine. If anything, I think most people don't think about it enough. I don't think it's a one size fits all by any means. Sometimes it'll depend on how much time you have. I would say, just to give you some background on when I took lessons when I was in high school, my teachers, while they were fantastic, they focus on repertoire. So it was just like, we were preparing for this competition. We're just working on like these 4 or 5 pieces to get them as musical as they can possibly get. We didn't really do a lot of like structured theory work. Definitely didn't do scales. I think I stopped practicing scales when I was like 9th grade. I didn't really develop a new appreciation for them until like well after graduate school. So as I've gone out into the world and developed my teaching and my own playing some more, I think it's think of the other things like the sight reading, the scales, technique. Think of it all as being sort of in service of the repertoire that you're playing, because ultimately we're not learning scales just so that we can go out in public and play scales, but it's to deepen our knowledge of playing in different keys, to help us understand the music theory of our pieces that we're playing a bit better. So for example, like say for scales, if you're working on a piece of music that's in C minor, maybe when you practice your scales, make sure one of those scales that you practice is C minor, so that you're getting into that universe of the key. I do think everybody should work in some sight reading. I think that's a component that does get overlooked a little bit. And I also think that people aren't really sure how to do that. There are a couple ways. It could be as easy as just getting a piece of music out and just kind of noodling through it. If you have a friend that plays the piano, I think one of the most fun ways you can practice sight reading is playing music with another person. Maybe just sight reading a piano 4 hands duet together. There is a book that's called, I think it's just called Improve Your Sight Reading. I can't remember who the author is, but there's a duet version where on the left side there's like the teacher part, and on the right side, there's a student part. It starts very, very simple, but things like that. Diabelli wrote an entire set of duets that's pretty cool. So for me, regardless of what, how much you do scales and technique and sight reading and things like that, I think whatever you do, the most important thing is before you start a practice session that you set a goal for your practice session that encompasses whatever you want to do. I think what often happens is we'll sit down and we'll just start playing, and whatever happens, happens. I've encouraged students, and we have some other videos about this process on our YouTube channel, but I think when you sit down, you can sort of frame your practice to get more out of it by taking a couple minutes before you start practicing to set your goals. So figure out like what you want to do, make sure that they're tangible goals. Make sure, and by tangible, I mean like there's a solid end point. Like at the end of the practice, you can say, I completed my goal or I didn't complete my goal. And avoid terms like better. I want my scales to be better. I want my Beethoven sonata to be better. You want it to be so specific that you could describe it to another person. They know exactly what you're talking about. So it could be like, I want to learn the first 24 measures of my Beethoven sonata without making any mistakes. That's a more sort of HD quality vision of what you want your goal to look like when you complete it. And then you know that you actually completed it at the end. Next, you want to think about how you're going to do it. So like we've been talking about this live stream, that's your sort of mapping out your step-by-step, how you're going to put the proverbial metaphorical Lego blocks together. And then set a timer and go. And then another important thing too is to just clear all the distractions from the room. I find it really interesting with phones. This is like a wonderful tool, but it's also a disaster for our attention. If you practice or do any kind of focused work that you want to give your complete attention to, I invite you to try this experiment. Leave your phone outside the room. Totally different room. Same thing. If you can, if there's a computer close by, a laptop, get rid of it. If you're stuck in a room with a desktop, you know, maybe there's only so much you can do. At least turn it off. But studies have been done. I need to find the exact study, but apparently just the presence of a cell phone, even if it's totally turned off, automatically makes us more distracted than when your device is outside the room. So we're sort of framing our practice with setting some goals before we start, clearing all distractions so we can keep laser focus, and then setting the timer. And then that allows us to really set the conditions to be in the zone, or achieve a flow state, if you've heard that term before, where you're so immersed in this one task and this one goal that it's almost like nothing else in the world matters, or time follows different rules, things like that. It's actually, when you get to that state, it's actually a really cool part of the process. And then when you're finished, doing a bit of a reflection on your practice process, where you look back at your goals that you set at the beginning. You think, did I accomplish my goals? Yes or no? It's not a bad thing if it's no. If I didn't complete my goals, then why was it? Were the goals a bit too ambitious? Did we get distracted? You know, just to sort of assess, because whether the goals went well or they didn't go so well, we want to use that reflection as an opportunity to keep improving the practice process, even by 1% with each session. So by sort of setting the goals and reflecting, we're practicing and improving the process of practicing, if that makes sense. So in terms of a routine that I like to stick to, it's, you know, when I hear routine, I don't even necessarily think, you know, scales, technique, repertoire, sight reading, but I think, all right, what are my goals, which can encompass any or all of those things. Keeping in mind how much time I have for the session, clear all distractions, the actual practice session itself, and then the reflection. And then part of the reflection should also be reflecting on what feels good about that practice session, even if you didn't complete your goals. As humans, we naturally want to do things again that feel good. So I think just taking that moment to be like, hey, I learned 8 more measures of my piece. Or if it was just a shorter practice session, it could be, hey, I learned 4 more measures of my piece. Or if it wasn't a great practice session, you could reflect on feeling good about just having done the thing that day, especially if establishing that habit is a challenge there. But I would encourage you to try that. And you can find, again, some other videos on our YouTube channel that are about this practice process and how to set what we call SMART goals, SMART, for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So I would encourage you to explore our channel, especially the videos we've put out in the last couple months or so, to research more on that. But really excellent question. I've been thinking to put together a video specifically on practice routines, so do stay tuned for that. And does anybody have any other questions? Thank you for the kind words, Marty, about hearing me practice. It's not often that we get to see learning in progress. I really appreciate that comment. I've always been curious about, you know, these star performers that play at Symphony Hall, or these you know, concert pianists or concert anything that just seem to be out of this world amazing musicians. And I've just thought so often, like, what do they do when they just like start learning a new piece for the first time. That's something that as students we rarely get to have that sort of window into what it, when somebody's touring, 75% of the year, like how do when they take something they've never played before, what do they do? Or they just know every piece of music on the planet, which is also possible. Not on the planet, but you do have some performers who have just learned their sort of core set of repertoire that they've played for years and years and years. And then it's just living with the repertoire and refining it and finding new interpretations and things like that. So that's one of the reasons why I'm trying to launch more of these sort of narrated practice sessions, so that you can observe the process and then take whatever bits that you can apply to your own practicing. Chris, thank you again. You're very welcome. Does anybody have any other questions about anything if you've been here since the beginning of the live stream? We're now past hour 2, so thank you for sticking around. And if anybody has any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, we can say goodnight and stay tuned for other exciting plans in our South Shore Piano School YouTube laboratory. Okay, I think most, especially here on the in the Eastern time zone, are probably ready to turn in. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and say goodnight for our live stream. Thank you so much again for joining. Stay tuned for more videos, live streams, and events coming soon. If you're just joining us, if this is the first time we're meeting, my name is Jonathan Roberts. I'm the director of the South Shore Piano School here in Quincy, Massachusetts, just south of Boston. If you're not already subscribed, do hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you can be among the first to find out about new videos, live streams, shorts, community posts as they're published. And with that, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video or live stream.